Hey everyone, today I'm starting a series of videos covering all the bosses in Remnant. For this video, I'll be going over every Earth boss fight, starting with dungeon bosses and then moving on to world bosses. My aim with these videos will be to help out newer players. Because of this, I'll be covering these bosses with early game gear setups in mind. If you've already beaten the game, then these videos won't really hold much for you, but maybe you'll learn something along the way. As a rule of thumb, most bosses on Earth take 15% more fire damage and 15% less rot damage. If they have any differences, I'll be sure to mention them. First up is Gorefist, a boss variation of the Hulk elite enemy type. Just like the elite enemy, he doesn't have any sort of weak spot. He does, however, share most of the same attacks as the Hulk, with the exception of some new abilities. When Gorefist first drops below around half the first bar, he will enter an enraged state. This grants him a 50% damage resistance against melee attacks. Alongside that, he will also summon a varied amount of rot exploders into the arena. Also while enraged, his horizontal sword swing will be replaced with a deadly 3-hit combo attack. Finally, any of his sword attacks have a small chance to inflict bleeding on you. Gorefist is a tanky and slow boss, but he does have ways of closing the distance on you. His charge attack increases his movement speed substantially, although you can use the arena to evade his attacks much easier. There are multiple vaulting spots that will force him to stop charging if you use them. Although he hits hard, his attacks are mostly slow and telegraphed, making it easy to use a neutral dodge to evade his blade swings when he's not enraged. His 3-part attack is very tricky to evade, so it's usually best to run away. When he becomes enraged, keep your distance and watch for exploders. Speaking of exploders, if you're having a difficult time managing them, I recommend bringing in some tonics. They will make you far tankier against their blasts. Hunter's Mark can also help reveal them in the arena for easier evasion. Be sure to bring a few band-aids to counteract the bleeding, as it reduces the healing from sources like your Dragonheart and Vender's Aura. Hotshot is one of your best early game mod options here, as it not only converts your damage into fire, it also gives you a 15% bonus damage as well. If you plan on staying close during the fight, the Scrapper set will be your best option. The reduced damage taken and close range damage boost are both incredible for his fight. No matter if you stay close or keep your distance, many early fights can be made easier by equipping a piece of the Drifter set for the increased stamina regeneration. As a final note, Skullcracker can be one of the more annoying modifiers to deal with, as getting flung back by every attack can make a single mistake fatal. Next up is Shroud, a boss version of the Archer enemy type. With the addition of a mortar skill, this boss is not too much different from the elite variant. Just like Gorefist, his arrow attacks can also apply bleeding on you. His head is a pretty big weak spot, although sometimes it can be hard to hit when he is aiming his bow. The adds in this fight are Root Devils. They are fairly squishy and aren't too big of a threat alone. In groups they pose a bigger issue. As for the arena, it consists of 4 squares in the corners and a raised platform area in the middle. Because of how we can abuse Shroud's teleporting mechanic, this fight can be relatively easy. When Shroud teleports, he will attempt to spawn within line of sight to attack a player. This means if we can find a location where we are fairly enclosed, we can force him to spawn right next to us. There are a few spots in the arena, but I prefer to use this area immediately to the left of the entrance. As long as the modifier is not Enchanter, this is an incredibly effective strat for both ranged and melee combat. Do be careful though, as the devils can spawn directly in the room with you and block the stairs and doorway very easily. Be sure to prioritize them first. You can always wait here for him to teleport back when they're dead. Just run around when he calls the mortars and this fight will be very easy. If you do have the Enchanter modifier, try to move around frequently and restrict yourself from aiming down sights too often. Clouds can form right behind you and explode without warning. Using tonics to reduce the damage taken is your best defense in this case. Next up is Brabus, a boss variation of the human enemies found in his dungeon. Wielding a coach gun, he will duck and hide behind cover and shoot at the player. His head is his weak spot, and unlike most bosses on Earth, he's actually resistant to fire damage and has no other weaknesses. His weapon does have damage fall off, so the further away you are, the less he'll hurt. His minions are the shotgun, hunting rifle, and melee grunts from the dungeon before him. The arena features various bits of cover with a few interior segments around the edge. The most effective strategy is simply using the side room with the fridge as cover. You are pretty much safe from most attacks from this spot as long as you are behind the door. You may occasionally be shot at from the outside of the window, but it's nothing too serious. As for Brabus, his attacks all have some sort of delay to them. When he is about to attack, he needs to enter a sort of aiming phase for a minimum time before firing. This is evident whenever he peeks out of cover. He doesn't fire immediately, rather he waits about a second and then fires both barrels. All you really need to do is dodge his shots and then follow up with some of your own. For the early game, I'd recommend using Mender's Aura and the Cultist set to generate mod power. The hunting rifle is the perfect weapon for the job too, although the coach gun isn't too bad at this distance. As a final note, the Skullcracker modifier can be a real annoyance in this fight, usually because if he lands one shot, the stagger will guarantee the other one will hit too. If you aren't doing the fridge strat, this can make pursuing him difficult if you catch even a single pellet. His minions will be sure to capitalize on you being staggered in place. Following Brabus, we have Mangler. He is a boss version of the Tumbler enemy type. Just like the normal Tumbler, he does not have a weak spot. He can roll around, scratch with his claws, and tunnel underground. When he reaches 50% health, he will grow in size and have even more reach with his attacks. The adds he summons are root seedlings, which can be easily taken care of with melee attacks or your secondary. The arena is a simple circle with 2 trees in the middle. There are also a few fire bulbs around on the floor that you can use to apply burning dots to it. As far as strategies go, you can really just stay stationary near the entrance of the arena. When he rolls at you, he will more often than not run into the wall behind you and get staggered. This gives you ample opportunity to dish out lots of damage. This is a very effective strategy, but be cautious when he grows in size. His claw attacks have far more range and can catch you off guard. Should you get the Enchanter modifier on this fight, just circle around the arena and avoid the clouds. Be sure to bring plenty of tonics as well. As a final note, like previously mentioned bosses, Skullcracker is a threat as it can make more attacks connect with you and subsequently kill you faster. This is very prevalent with his 3-hand swipe attack, as on higher difficulties the damage will kill you pretty quickly. Riphide is the last of the dungeon bosses and is a variation of the splitter enemies found in the Leader's Lab dungeon. He has a few abilities, some melee attacks, a throwing projectile, and a slam attack. His red glowing core is his weak spot, although it can be a little hard to hit sometimes. It is also worth noting that he takes 10% less frost damage, although at the start of the game you won't have any source of this type. The arena is a lengthy rectangular subway train room, with some offshoots on the side and some walls in the middle. Occasionally, after splitting at least once, he will have one of his clones channel a healing ability. This channeling can be interrupted by hitting the clone with any sort of attack twice, including dot damage. All of his clones do share a singular health bar, meaning damage dealt to one hurts all of them. Because of the shared health bar mechanic, we can easily abuse dots and area of effect attacks to deal incredible damage to him. As I have covered in my previous video on him, mods like a hot shot and explosive shot work wonders. Each clone can have 3 separate fire dots on them. This makes dealing damage easier as more clones become available. As he splits, you will have to keep an eye on every clone and dodge multiple slam attacks and projectiles. Their range attacks do have an audio cue, so be sure to listen for them. As for the slams, I recommend putting some distance between you and the clones to make each follow-up slam a bit easier to evade. Keep moving around the arena and apply your fire dots when needed. There are also a few bulbs on the ground that can apply fire dots to a group of the clones as well. Use explosive shot as more clones become available. When aiming the explosive, try to directly hit one of the clones with it. For some reason, aiming at the ground can cause some of the clones to not take damage from the blast. As the first of the 2 world bosses, the Ent is a hulking mass that can be cut down the size with the right tactics. He has 2 rolling slam attacks, one directional and long, the other is a circular surrounding attack with less range. He does have some hand swipes, and even his feet walking around can deal damage to you. Around 75% of his health, he will kneel down and shoot a barrage of mortars at you. They explode on impact and leave behind a cloud of rot similar to an exploder. These can be avoided by dodging before they land or sprinting in a line as he fires them. When he drops below half health, he'll do a scream move that will stun you if you're close and summon many seedlings into the arena. These seedlings, as well as the exploders that fall from his branches, are the adds you'll be dealing with during the fight. It goes without saying that braining tonics is advised here. Like with many bosses, he has an alternative kill method. This involves focusing fire on one of his legs until it breaks. While in this state, the Ent will crawl towards you faster than walking. He also loses the ability to do any sort of slam attack and call for additional seedlings. However, he can still engage in firing mortars. His melee attacks will now also be replaced with a slow 3-hit move that finishes with an overhead slam. If for whatever reason you are close to him after he swings his arms or does a mortar attack, he may slam his face into the ground. All of his slam attacks, his grounded 3-hit combo, and mortar attack open up his weak spot on his back. Sometimes it can be hit from the front. Other times you'll need to move around to his side to land a shot. As for the arena, it's just a big plain circle, nowhere to hide or use as cover. Finally, he shares the same set of weaknesses and resistances as Riphide, and that he has a 10% resistance to frost damage. For world bosses, I'll go over both kill methods, as they usually require different strategies. For the Ents, you'll need to decide from the start of the fight whether you want the alt kill or not. If you do, you'll need to focus on one of his legs until he's down. When he is down, he'll be much more manageable. You can bait out his melee attack combo by dodge rolling back about twice and then have easy access to shooting his weak spot. This strategy is fairly simple, just take out his exploders and mine the mortars. Bait him out, rinse and repeat. Now if you want to beat him standing up, it's a little more difficult. You'll have to avoid attacking his legs. This means you'll have to deal with the slam attacks and seedling summons. Early on this can be a little daunting. You'll need to manage watching his moves, the exploders, and seedlings when they spawn. Attacking his weak spot whenever possible is going to be your best bet for taking him down standing up. Fortunately, all of the Ent's attacks can be used against his adds. His slam attacks and mortars both can instantly kill the seedlings and exploders if they come in contact with them. Do be careful, however, as you may have an exploder heading in your direction as a rolling slam attack is speeding behind them. This may cause them to get killed and fling at you only to explode instantly. If you see him about to do a slam attack on the ground and an exploder is getting too close, pop them with a bullet or two from your handgun to stagger them and save yourself. One incredibly helpful piece of equipment that can help you in this fight that you may have acquired from your campaign or adventures is the Twisted Mask. This gives an incredible boost to rot resistance, which can help you in the case if you get hit by an exploder or one of the blasts from the mortar attacks. Combined with a tonic, you'll be taking way less damage from these two sources. As the second world boss in Earth, Singe the Root Dragon can pose a challenge for many players starting out. First off, he is the second boss to feature a resistance to fire damage, this time clocking in at 20% resistance. Coupled with the fact that the adds he spawns are flame devils, you really won't be wanting to use any sort of fire damage during the fight. His weak spot is the glowing circle on his chest. It can be a bit hard to shoot while he's on all fours, but it is still possible to hit it. Singe himself has a variety of both ranged and melee attacks. For fire attacks, he spews a medium-range sweeping breath, a long-range slow-moving fireball, a rolling ground blast attack, and an explosion that he summons at your feet. Bringing some Hydra coolants will definitely help with taking less fire damage. He also has some melee moves, some claw swipes, some bites, a tail whip, a dive, and a charge move. Occasionally he will also stand on his hind legs to summon in some adds. This leaves his chest wide open to attacks. As mentioned before, the adds in this arena are flame devils. They are a little more tanky than normal devils, and they can deal damage when they are near you if they are on fire. You can avoid igniting them by melee attacking them. This makes them much easier to kill as most melee attacks will stagger them. Unfortunately, because of the arena design, there's a great chance they will ignite from Singe's attacks or by walking over one of the lit oil puddles. As for the arena, it is a box shape with some walls and cars strewn about. They can provide cover from Singe's fireball attacks at the cost of being destroyed on impact. In the middle of the arena are some puddles of oil. They can be ignited by any of Singe's fire attacks or by a lit fire devil walking over them. For his alternate kill, you must deal enough damage to his tail to break it off. Nothing changes about the fight once this happens, so it is up to you whether or not you want to break it for the reward or not. As far as strategies go, you'll need to decide where you want to position yourself in the fight. If you play at a distance, you can use the cars and walls to shield yourself from fireballs. However, do be careful, as if you remain too far away from him, he may charge directly towards you, breaking any structures in his path. I don't recommend staying in medium range, as his sweeping breath attack is incredibly difficult to avoid at this distance. If you choose to play close range, you'll want to stay near his hind legs. He has some janky hitboxes when he attacks in front of him that make it not worth fighting from that position. As you fight, keep in mind the puddles of oil around the arena. Nothing sucks more than surviving a fireball attack only to get cooked alive by a puddle. Should you decide you want to break his tail, you have a few options. You can get up close and try to move around him to break his tail. Alternatively, if you have the sniper rifle, you can snipe between his legs. Using the scope, you can see some parts of his tail from the front of him. Keep attacking there and eventually it will break. As for the rest of the fights, the adds do pose some threat, but they can occasionally be killed by Singe. Only around 2 will spawn at a time, so try to take them out before focusing back on Singe. When he does his summoning move, unload your weapon into his weak spot. If you deal enough damage, you might actually be able to stagger him out of the animation. And that covers all of Earth's bosses. Hopefully you learned something from this video. As I said from the start, the intended audience I'm looking to help here is newer players. Obviously, there are easier ways of killing these bosses, but for the sake of a true beginner's guide, I plan to keep this sort of general area of expectations on gears, traits, weapons, etc. I'll probably cover ROM next, and I might try to cut down on information in future parts because the script alone has been one of the biggest ones I've typed in a long while. Let me know how your campaigns go, and if I was able to help you get through any difficult parts of the game. I plan on doing more voice content in the future, so let me know if you prefer subtitled videos, spoken videos, or a mix of both. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.